This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Hello and welcome to We Are Starfleet, a part of the Film Stories podcast network. I am your host, Craig McKenzie, taking command over from, who is also here, Captain Mike Slammer. Hello.
Hello and welcome, everybody. This is We Are Starfleet, and interestingly, I have decided to relinquish command status.
Yeah, it's less work for him, more work for me.
Yeah.
He's happy with it.
Yeah. Mike hasn't died or anything, guys. He didn't die and make Craig captain. So
He may have a punctured lung, but we don't know. I don't know how it works, the medical tricorder, so who could say?
Yeah, they're different from regular tricorders.
Yeah, they have a little thing on the back that you
Go,
detach
woo,
and
woo.
wave in front of people.
original was a salt shaker, as I understand it.
Absolutely, yeah. That voice you heard is not just a nerdy blogger, it's the nerdy blogger, Ashley Thomas. Hello.
Good to be back.
Welcome.
Happy to be here.
And last but by no means least, it's Ian Buckley. Welcome.
That's me. Hello.
That is you. Well, yes. So listeners may have already listened to our first Academy primer, our first primer for the Starfleet Academy show, which is coming up really soon. In that first episode, we generally discussed the Academy as a concept and how it's been utilized throughout Star Trek, but we're going to dig into the two most cadet-heavy episodes the franchise has given us. And no, we're not talking about that one where Wesley took the entrance exam, because that's Season 1 TNG, and frankly horrible, because it's Season 1 TNG. So we're going to start off with Season 5 TNG, with The First Duty, which is a Wesley Crusher episode that isn't a nightmare to watch. Basically, the premise of this one is the Enterprise goes back to Earth so that Picard can deliver a commencement speech at the Academy that we never actually get to see, because he gets waylaid by an accident that claims the life of a cadet and puts Wesley Crusher and not Tom Paris and a couple other people in front of an inquiry into the accident. That's, of course, as I said, The First Duty. So we'll just start off by talking about it generally in terms of our remit here as an Academy/cadet episode. So Ian, we'll start with you. A, what do you think of this episode? And B, what do you think of it as a episode about cadets, about the school kids?
It's a good one. I've always liked this one. I don't think I've watched it. I had watched it too recently prior to this revisit, but I remember, like you said, it's a good Wesley one. I was never quite as hard on Wesley as I think you are, but he also just wasn't.
No, I don't mind Wesley. It's just
He wasn't
he's an
given the
easy
most to
target.
work with. Let's be honest. Sometimes he was doing the best with what he was given, and he wasn't always given the best material. This was good material. This was a solid exploration of cadet life for the first time that we'd really gotten on air, and really haven't gotten that much since, which is one of the reasons why having a Starfleet Academy show is kind of, in theory, an exciting idea, because this is something that a lot of people have been curious about. We get glimpses of this in the franchise, and this is one of our bigger glimpses of that. And it's a good one. I think Picard has some great moments. Wesley has some standout moments, which he didn't often get in the series. And I like the insight, the lore that we start to get around cadet life. We meet Boothby. It's all this stuff that does have an impact down the line. We get we get members of this cast returning in memorable episodes further on down the line. We have the sort of recurrence of Nick Locarno on Voyager, but like that that doesn't exist without this episode. So this episode has an important part to play in, I think, Star Trek lore.
Yeah, definitely. Ashley, same questions for you.
Yeah, these are really interesting episodes. It had been a couple years since I had revisited either of them. I think the last time I watched The First Duty was the end of Lower Decks, Season 4. Which, that episode comes back there. And then it had been a couple of years since I had seen Valiant. So what I like about these episodes are these representations of Starfleet Academy is you get a really good feel for, man, Starfleet really believes in hands-on practical training. So much of what we in the West experience as college, unless you are doing something like in the medical field or in a trade in which you must use your hands to do a thing, you don't really get this in the field training all that often. And I feel like in both of these, you get cadets who are learning theoretical stuff in the classroom and also getting to do things out in the field. In particular, we'll talk about it more in the Valiant episode. So I just think these are both really interesting examples of that concept. Without us ever actually seeing a classroom, though, that's the other thing I think is interesting, is we don't actually see a physical classroom. So more on thoughts on that in a little bit. But
And Mike, same to you. What do you think?
I really enjoyed both of these episodes as almost like bottle episodes. They definitely have a lot of lore that they fill in on. The first duty, especially showing us what academy life can be like, even if it's just like a small slice. And especially with Valiant as well, you get to see a little bit of what wartime Academy cadets are going through and what the sort of propaganda is that they're being fed, which we'll get into a little bit when we talk about that episode. But the first duty in particular, I think, is really good, especially with Nick Locarno as a character coming back in Star Trek Lower Decks. I would be remiss if we did not include that little tidbit of information, because I think the way that Lower Decks sort of filled in some of those gaps in their season 4 finale episode was really cool.
Him having a whole fleet or Dyson sphere or whatever he had was a bit of a stretch from Disgraced Cadet, but yeah, it wasn't horrible. I enjoyed this episode a lot as well. I think it's a really strong example of TNG, and it's a really good example of flipping perspective as well, which is something that TNG did periodically and something TV doesn't really do anymore. You don't really have the episode where it's like, hey, why don't we just look at this from a slightly different angle and see what it looks like? And it's a really good Wesley episode because it gets him away from being the precocious boy genius. He's just a young guy that's fallible and makes a mistake and has to learn how to deal with that and has to deal with the moral implications of telling the truth or not. That's just pretty new territory for Wesley Crusher, because he is normally, like I say, the boy genius that saves the ship or does the jobs better than the main cast. So that's a really important thing for him, and it's really something they should have done with him back when he was actually a regular. It's interesting that it takes him to be a guest star for them to get away from that. And it's almost this idea of, you seem like a genius around a certain group of people, but once you're around your peers, it maybe thins out a little bit. You start to realize that other people are maybe as smart as you or more socially capable than you or whatever. I think it's, you could almost have an Academy spin-off with Wesley as the main character learning how to be around other kids, because he's never done that. He's always been around adults.
Yeah. Up to this point,
Yeah.
Wesley has been boy wonder, getting patted on the back every time we see him. And I think this is the first opportunity where he's in the peer group. Nobody cares that he's boy wonder.
Yeah.
It's also a relatable problem. It's not the travails of a young boy genius. It's a young man who is in a new setting and wants to fit in socially and gets caught up in this, peer group that he has a lot of respect for and wants to fit into. It's all stuff that people can relate to, real people. The boy geniusness of it aside, you know, it's a problem, a set of problems. It's a relationship dynamic that a lot of us can recognize and relate to in some respect, which I think, to Craig's point, was not something that the writers frequently allowed Wesley to have. It was a lot of these problems that were very science fiction-y, and boy genius saves the day, and like these things that I think they wanted the audience to go, wow, isn't that cool? And I think the real solution was to make him a more relatable human being.
Yeah. Only they'd cracked it 5 years earlier. think of where we would be. We talked about the lore of the Academy. We get smatterings of it here. We'll just, since we're having a TV show about Starfleet Academy that should explore the workings of the concept as a education system. You don't get very much of that here, as you said, Mike, I think, but we do get little bits and pieces. You have Riker talking about his Vulcan superintendent that had memorized all the personnel files, and Picard talking about the Betazoid superintendent that just knew what you'd done before you walked into their office. Things like that. You have Boothby as he's not a teacher, but he's wise, and people go to him for advice and look to him for guidance and things like that. There's all that. There's just little smatterings of here's how it kind of works around here, and you get a sense of what it might be like. Although I did put it as, even though it's a Wesley-centric episode, it's also from the adult perspective, as the adults looking at how the kids are doing it and questioning the kids and dealing with their decisions and trying to get the truth out of them. So it is very much we are adults writing about our perspective of looking inward to this school, rather than we're going to look at the school looking out to the adult world. But that'll be the life experience of the writers, I would imagine. They're just too old to think about college age anymore at that point. Yeah, Ashley, we'll go to you first. What do you think of the lore that we got?
Yeah, I like the idea of, I guess because I've always been a nerd. I mean, it's literally in my handle. I'm the nerdy blogger. I like school. I like learning stuff. And so anytime I got like a book or a story, something about a school, yeah, let's go to that school. That sounds cool. I can learn cool things at the school, X-Men, Harry Potter, whatever. I'm like, yeah, go to a cool school where I can learn things that are way more fun than whatever homework I got to do today. So yeah, I've always been really interested in that kind of concept. So I like this idea of like this lore building with like, oh, you've got the not a professor, but a professor, with Boothby, and I love how throughout like 90s era Star Trek, 80s 90s era Star Trek, where we get different stories about Boothby, like secondhand, like you almost never see this guy. But we know that he would bring roses to Janeway because she loved roses, and he would set Picard straight. And also, Picard, you had hair. Where'd it go? That's funny. Nobody's ever said that to Patrick Stewart ever. But I like that. While he's not a professor, he is revered, and so I kind of feel like he's kind of like the living legend of Academy, and I'm kind of wondering, looking into the future at Starfleet Academy, who are we going to get a Boothby type character? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, this is the only time we see the real
Right.
Boothby. The other time we see him, he's a species 8472
Right.
doppelganger.
Don't worry, we're getting Hollow Boothby.
Hollow Boothby.
Well, I think the actor's probably long dead, so
I think so too.
That's why he's
Doesn't
a
matter, we're getting
hologram
Hollow
now.
Boothby.
Again, that's why he's a hologram, Greg.
yeah, that'd be pretty grisly if they did that.
He's
wouldn't
backed
it?
up right there with Picardo. So.
Yeah. But Boothby is another interesting bit of lore building as well, because he's a groundskeeper because that's what he wants to do.
Yeah.
He loves it, and no one's paying him to do it. He has no skin in the game in that respect. It's just, I like to tend the grounds of the Academy and see all the people come and go. And that's it. That's proper utopia, isn't it? I want to garden, so I'm going to garden. Nothing else. That's my life.
I'm going to garden because I want to, dang it.
Yeah?
Garden and wisen up the children.
Yeah. And it seems like he's the only one who does it, which is a little bit unrealistic, though. A place that size.
I mean, I might
A big
be,
grounds.
I might be a little on the other side of this. I don't care about Boothby as a character. I don't care about Boothby as like a fixture of lore, and I don't care about Boothby as some sort of wizened advisor to all these Starfleet officers. I feel like it's just one of those. A writer had, an advisor when he was in college, and maybe it was a gardener, maybe it was somebody similar, like a janitor or something. But that trope of, the elder wiseman holding down a blue collar job at a revered institution, I don't know. It doesn't sit right with me. I'm not interested. It's kind of low effort to me.
I think the way he was deployed here was pretty good, though, because you had Picard saying, "I'd made this mistake, and you showed me what to do and told me how to. You told me what I needed to do and let me do it."
It's
And
super lightweight stuff. It's very lightweight. It's
Yeah.
very like surface level, good in the script for a TV show in the '90s. When you come back to it, there's no real meat to it. It's
yeah, but the dialogue is good because it doesn't explain what that thing Picard did
Right.
was. Because if it was being written today, I feel like it would be like, Boothby, you helped me out when I caused that shuttle accident that injured that person, remember? Yes, we were both there. We both remember. Instead, it was, you really helped me out here. It's like, you made a mistake and you sorted it out. You that was it. That it just, you don't need to know what it was. It just lets you imagine what might have happened. And I'm sure there's a non-canon short story or something that explains that event, but I don't need to read it. I'm happy with the fact that Picard was young once. He made a few mistakes, and this guy really helped him listen to his conscience and admit to it,
Yeah, I'm kind of
which is
indifferent.
good.
I mean, he's fine. I think it's, to Mike's point, it is a little tropey. I think, though, the first time he's deployed in this episode, it's not a trope at that point. I mean, at least not within the context of Star Trek lore. I think the going back to him and Voyager, Voyager sometimes suffered from that, going back to the TNG idea as has been well discussed over the years. But I think Boothby's an example of that. Like, I think if he was just this one-off character, I don't think he would rub anyone the wrong way. I think giving
Yeah.
him this continued life sort of outside of this initial role was, I think, what maybe started to rub people the wrong way about this character. I'm fine with him. It's just to Craig's point, I think he's fine in this episode. I think he's well enough deployed, but it's not a deep exploration of anything in particular. But to Craig's point again, you don't need that necessarily. It's just you get enough from him, from that relationship in this episode to kind of go from there.
And I like the travel of Boothby saying, "I just made sure you listen to yourself."
Yeah.
And Picard says that to Wesley at the end.
Yeah, good catch.
So, yeah, shows that he learned. It's a lesson hard learned, and then Wesley's another lesson hard learned, and it's There's more to the academy than just studying. That's what they're getting at there. There's life experience, and you don't always get that through people in uniform.
But to Ashley's point, I really want to see school. Like, I like school. I'd like to see some actual school in this new show. It's called Starfleet Academy. If there isn't a lot of academy in it, I'll be disappointed.
Yeah. Insert the Jeff Goldblum meme here. We're going to have some academy in your Starfleet Academy.
Yep.
Nick Locarno, then, the Tom Paris that never was. He was originally going to be Nick Locarno in Voyager, but they would have had to pay the writer of this episode, and they couldn't be doing that every time that the character appeared. Can't be crediting people for their work. So they changed the backstory a bit. Tom Paris was responsible for the deaths of 3 people, whereas Locarno was only indirectly responsible for 1. So I don't see where the redeemable excuse comes from, but there we go. They are basically the same character, although they're played by the same actor. I do think that Locarno is a little less personable. I feel like he's less likable than Tom Paris is. When you have Tom Paris, I think they let Robert Duncan McNeil's natural charm do a lot of the talking. Whereas here he's like, no, I'm in charge of this group and you'll do what I say. It's peer pressure. That's what he represents, isn't it? He wants to make the other cadets lie for him.
He's very headstrong in his position as head of the Red Squad. Is it the Red Squad? No, that's Valiant.
Nova Squadron. But it's a precursor to Red Squad, isn't it?
Yes. So the Nova Squadron, we've seen these guys in school before. I'm sure I've been one of those guys before where you're placed in charge of something and you just want to do great. You just want it to be awesome and you want to do something cool. And in this case, Nick wants to like really show up at the commencement graduation with a really cool maneuver, and he's pushing them very hard. I really noticed that even, rewatching this with a critical eye. Robert Duncan McNeil plays it really like, hey, I'm really putting the pressure on you guys.
Mm.
Yeah.
He felt up until like the very end of the episode almost like narcissistic to me. It was more than just, hey, I want us to look really cool and do this really cool thing, and we're gonna do it because I said so. But like he like gaslights Wesley into like keeping him from telling the truth, and that really like bothered me.
You understand, Wesley. You were out in space. You, more than anyone, understand what's at stake here. You understand loyalty.
Well, and my as somebody who is a very empathetic person, I have had the unfortunate experience of being taken advantage of like that by narcissists. And so I know what that feels like firsthand, and that just made my blood boil. Like as soon as he started talking, I was like, no, you are not going to do that. I'm not going to allow that. So I appreciated that he at least took responsibility like he said he would in the end. But based on what we get in Lower Decks, we're not talking about that particular episode today, but you can see that really rankled him, that he did that. And he's like, I shouldn't have done that because Nova Squadron was the best and I was going to do this. And it's like, no, you messed up and you didn't like do what you should have done. And you had to face the consequences, and you don't like the consequences of your own actions. So suck it up and deal. I don't even like saying that, but like, he's never dealt with that. So, but again, we're not talking about that episode, but at this point in my brain, it's hard for me to disseminate what he would eventually become. So.
Yeah. And you get the contrast with true loyalty in the episode as well, where Picard says, Wesley's one of our own, we're going to look into this. Without being prompted, he just does it. And that's, that's proper loyalty, without any pressure, without any expectations. Picard says, Wesley's one of our own, and Geordi and Data are like, we get it. We'll look into it.
Well, and I think like that's a really good point to make there, Craig. Like, Picard knowing like Wesley's character too, like knowing it's like this is out of character for him to behave in this way. Let's dig into this further and see what's going on. And him giving Wesley that talking to, like the come to Jesus meeting, like, hey, this is the truth, and whether Wesley like wants to admit it or not, he's like, well, crap, we're gonna get in trouble anyway. It will, and he doesn't feel, and even in his conscience, he is having like a crisis of conscience about this. Like he doesn't like the idea of lying. He doesn't like the idea of them covering this up. Yeah, that would rankle him. So good on Wes for having a conscience.
Yeah, and there was the guilt trip from the dead kid's father as well. Yeah, I'm really sorry he was so he froze in the moment or whatever, and it was just can't let this kid go to his grave with his dad thinking he was a screw up. Yeah, really strong stuff.
It's really powerfully performed too on screen. Like, before that deposition, Joshua Albert, the pilot who had passed during that starburst maneuver, his father wants the commencement to go on. They were going to cancel the commencement, in light of the tragedy, but he takes a step back and offers for it to continue, and he says like life goes on, duties continue, life goes on, which is really powerful stuff, in this episode where a majority of the cast are younger. This is Wesley's peer group. This is a big lesson that they're all learning, and this is before the deposition even begins.
Mm-hmm. And the thing about the maneuver is, what did Locarno think was actually going to happen, even if they'd successfully pulled it off? Obviously, the crowd would have been pretty excited, but they would have got in trouble after anyway, because like this was really dangerous. We're not in the it's fine to do dangerous stuff if it gets results era of Star Trek. It's no, these safety procedures are there for a reason era of Star Trek.
I imagine it's one of those things where it's easier to ask for forgiveness than for permission.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But you can't imagine it would have been warmly received by the brass afterwards. You have an idea how dangerous that was? You're lucky you're not dead. And now you don't get to graduate, you idiot.
Yeah, it is a curious consideration. I guess it did really seem like it was more about the ego and the bragging rights and and also just the believing that you can do no wrong. You believe you're invincible. You start, getting high on your own supply, and it's, resulted in a death now.
Classic popular kid syndrome, isn't it? Like, I'm untouchable, everybody loves me, everybody looks to me for...
And to Ashley's point, classic
validation.
manipulative behavior. I mean, really, if you've ever witnessed stuff like that in real life, and I think the first time I saw this episode when I was a kid, I hadn't. So it was a learning experience. And then now you've met people, like we've all met people like that in real life who, you hear them talking and it's like, you son of a bitch, you're just trying to get something out of me. You're just trying to manipulate me, you ass. And this was probably an important episode for me to watch as a kid to learn that was something that peers, like your classmates, like people you looked up to, people who were popular, like that was a pattern of behavior that you'd have to look out for.
Yeah, you might not have noticed it, but your brain did, as they say.
Yeah.
In terms of the actual structure of the episode, in terms of the adults speaking to the children, I actually found it refreshing, even though it was decades old episode. But in terms of what you tend to be exposed to now with the old or older young dynamics in TV and film at the moment, it's this lack of cynicism around either generation. So what you have is the younger generation looking to the older generation for guidance because they've been there and they understand. It's the competence porn thing, right? We respect the fact that these guys know what they're doing, and the older generation are not saying, you kids are screwed, you're not going to be as good as we were. And I wonder if that's a problem that Academy is going to run into as a TV show. Is it going to get drawn into those kind of gender divides that we see everywhere in media at the moment? This idea of, well, you broke the world for us, or, well, you're not fit to inherit this world, kind of.
The generational divide. I agree.
Yeah,
I think that
you should just have less avocado toast and cancel your Netflix. And you can buy a house. That mentality from older people. And
I think you make a great point.
You broke our world, which you did, by the way. Right. Older people, you broke our world, and we're living in it. But it's interesting that in the 90s you have this optimistic outlook at that world, or that worldview.
Yeah, sort of like this is like a mentor-mentee kind of attitude of, oh, these are people from whom I can learn. And you also have a more experienced generation being like, here are all these people who I can help learn. And it's this mutually beneficial and respectful relationship, and there isn't that intergenerational antagonism or ego or sense of like, you old fucks are holding on for too long. You won't let go of anything. You're clinging to your desks. You won't retire so that we can take over. And all the older people going like, well, if you knew what the hell you were doing, we wouldn't have to keep our jobs for so long. It's all this
who's responsible
cynicism.
for teaching who?
Right.
I did not ask for the participation trophy. You just gave it to me.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's kind of summed up a bit in Picard's final conversation with Wesley at the very end of the episode. He doesn't sugarcoat what happened. He says, you made a mistake, you should feel bad, and things are not going to be easy from here on out, but you did the right thing. And sometimes that sucks. Sometimes it reflects, or sometimes it'll make your life suck for a bit, but ultimately it's better. And then
there's also a really great scene that I actually really love in this episode, where Dr. Crusher is with Wesley, and she's basically saying like, it's gonna be okay, we're gonna get to the bottom of this, like the Enterprise,
someone faked that footage.
The Enterprise is investigating, we're gonna get to the bottom of this. And Wesley basically snaps and says, don't protect me. And I love that scene.
Yeah. Because again, he's a popular kid and he doesn't want to look like he went crying to his mum.
That's interesting.
Which
I
is-
actually thought it stemmed from I know that I did wrong. Whatever happens, happens.
Hmm.
And
That's
I
there
don't want
too,
the
yeah.
Enterprise to cover for me because I know I did wrong.
Sure.
Like someone doctored that footage, definitely. It's like Beverly can't see her son as being this fallible
Yeah.
person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's a lesson hard learned for her as well. It's like, oh God, my son is a person that will make mistakes.
Yeah.
As opposed to all the other times he almost blew up the ship with his various experiments, but we'll forget about that.
There are a lot of
He's a boy
let's be-
genius. It's fine.
there are a lot of parents who cannot comprehend the idea that their kid might do something wrong or making a mistake.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, I mean, I guess if you're a parent, which I am not, that might be a way you might lean, unless your
Yeah.
kid has a big history of bad behavior. But Wesley doesn't, so obviously, I mean, yeah, Wesley's got a
Yeah.
clean slate, a squeaky clean track record. So, I mean, pretty much, other than again, all of his science experiments going wrong, but he wasn't actively trying to do something bad, Craig. Like, I think that's the difference.
No.
That's the difference there.
No, but he did almost destroy the ship on several
Yeah.
occasions.
Well.
Remember those nanites he let loose?
Oh yeah, I'd forgotten about the nanites. Again, Wesley. I don't hate Wesley. I love Wesley because I was the annoying know-it-all kid growing up. So I'm like, yeah, Wesley, rock that sweater. Know all the answers.
And if we got more of this Wesley, he would be better regarded.
Oh yeah,
I think.
sure.
Well, there was the earlier episode where he turns up, the game one.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just the game.
That's a good
it's
one.
called. But he,
Mm.
yeah. But again, he's the boy genius that saved the ship, but he's also a bit more normal there as
Sure.
well.
I think like
Yeah.
showcasing what academy life is like in this episode is largely surrounding like the disciplinary proceedings and the
Yeah.
the inquisition that is undertaken outside of quarters and the courtroom. There's no real academy. Oh, and of course the grounds.
The grounds,
The
yeah.
garden
Yes.
outside wherever they were.
Doors with handles. What's that about? Cadets don't get automatic doors. They have to open their own doors.
You have to earn your privilege of automation.
But they have a little sci-fi sound when the door unlocks when they turn the handle as well. I think it's how can we future up a door handle? This is apparently
with our security system, anytime we open or close the door, it's got a little sensor like pop pop pop. Like, and so now I'm gonna think about it as like I have a Star Trek door. My side door is a Star Trek door. Front door is a Star Trek door. It's got handles. I mean, it's only Academy grade, but
yeah, it's advanced in some ways.
Yeah, there you go.
Any more about the first duty before we move on to our second and final episode?
If
I mean,
I
I did
may,
think it was.
go
for it.
ahead, Ian. No. You
No,
go ahead.
no,
I've talked
please.
a lot today. Oh, I
No.
was going to say something silly. So if you would like to say something important and cool,
Well,
go
I
ahead.
certainly don't want to call it important, but I am just sort of curious. I was reading a little bit about the production of this episode, and Rick Berman was initially resistant to the idea because he's like, we can't set an episode on Earth. Like, this is Star Trek. We're supposed to be out in space, stars, all that shit. And I obviously they won him over and convinced him that this could still be a very Star Trek message heavy show, and he eventually relented. I was just, do you feel like TNG missed a trick by not having more of these change of pace episodes? Or do you feel like, obviously we all like the episode, so we're not sorry that it exists, but I guess, how do you feel about that attitude of Berman's? Obviously not a person who is free of criticism.
I'm always a fan of format breaking episodes
Yeah.
because I like the shifts in perspective. The other episode that Sito appears in, Lower Decks, which obviously inspired an entire TV show, is again, it's a flip of that perspective. It's an angle in the universe you don't see very often. And we got it the previous season with Family as well, where you got a real slice of civilian life through Picard's family and so on. But it's just not something you get very often, and I always appreciate getting that thing because it gives you scope, which is very difficult to do on a standing show where you're on the same ship every week and stuff like that. But you can do slightly different things. You can have a look at a different angle of the same universe, and it can only enrich it. Well, if it's done well. There is obviously very bad
That's always the
examples of
caveat
that,
when you're
but
like, yeah, we love when they break formula, is they have to do it well. Like, you have to do
Yeah.
something with that idea. You can't just be mixing things up just for the sake of mixing things up.
and we don't get episodes like this anymore, really.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
which I think is another reason why when I go back and I watch an episode like this, especially if it's in the context of a larger rewatch and I see it, it's like, oh, this was it, it was really nice to have these episodes that were such a change of pace that that could shake things up, give you a different perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it's on the ship, like with an episode like Data's Day, but I like popping back to Earth and we're checking in on Wesley, and it's, Picard gets some amazing material here, and it all feels like, now that it exists, it's hard to kind of imagine TNG and Trek existing without this episode. I mean, it really does feel like an episode that has had an outsized impact.
The difference between what this episode is doing and what Strange New Worlds does is we understand what the pace to change is in TNG, whereas in Strange New Worlds we don't really, because we get the gimmick every other week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So
right.
you get a strong sense. We already know what TNG is, so when you get something like this, it's a palate cleanser.
I think it does a really
Yeah.
good job of also growing up Wesley for the audience. He was, obviously he got a little older as the series went on, and he needed to the writers needed to do something to separate him from Boy Wonder to a member of the crew. So I think this episode does a really good job of bridging that gap for Wesley Crusher, the character.
Yeah.
I think something interesting, just one of the things that we touched on a little bit, but what I really like about this episode is, and this is something I just tend to enjoy in Star Trek, where it asks you, what is the moral right thing to do, and why do we do it? And so when we learn that the first duty, above all, is to the truth, and I think that is a good way to give you a flavor. This is what Starfleet stands for, and it is whatever is true. And I like that Wesley is forced to reckon with that, because he doesn't feel comfortable lying, but he also doesn't want to get in trouble. He doesn't want to get his friends in trouble. And yet, what's the right course of action here? And so I really, really enjoy this particular episode for that reason. It makes this clear stance of, this is what is the moral and right thing to do here, and the first duty is to the truth. So anyway, I like that. The silly thing I was going to say earlier was the punishment for this is you basically have failed all of your classes this year. As someone who I won't say I was always the smartest person in the room, because I definitely wasn't, but I remember there was one year I had to take for my undergrad degree, I had to take history of the English language, which is the hardest class that I took in undergrad, because linguistics, not my jam at all. They make my head hurt. God bless you. More power to you if you can do them. I am not one of those people. But I knew I was struggling. I was sick the week of the final, and I had to take it anyway because it's the final. The odds were not in my favor, and I had a nightmare the day before grades came out that I failed the class and I had to take it again. And thank God I got a D. So D is for diploma, C's get degrees. Anyway, so whenever the Picard is like, you've got to retake all your classes from this year, I'm like, I just want to throw up whenever he says that. Like, that makes me physically nauseous, because I am that much of a nerd. I'm like, no.
Not only does everybody hate you, but you have to hang around for an extra
year.
year.
Yeah. So, also, nobody will want to be your friend. You will have to go sit at the not cool kids table at lunch.
And in the Lower Decks episode, when Picard says that he asked for Sito because he wanted to make sure that she would get a fair shake, it's a really great Picard moment. He just quietly lets her on his ship and doesn't announce it until he's confronted about it, I guess.
Right.
Mike, any last things on this episode?
I don't think so. I think as an introduction to Academy life, it serves well to kind of showcase what Academy goers are experiencing in a very small, very tight knit kind of a way. I think the first duty could have included more visuals of the Academy life. I think that would have been interesting. Just even separate from talking about, the fact that we have a whole TV show dedicated to Starfleet Academy coming. I think it would have been interesting as a viewer back in the 90s, as a young kid, to see myself in that position. I think that would have done a lot to encourage viewership back then too.
This could have almost served as a backdoor pilot for an Academy spin-off starring Wesley
How about
Crusher,
that?
couldn't
Could
it?
have. It really could have. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of those.
Do you imagine the setup of Wesley has to repeat the year and everybody hates him and he has to
I mean, for
make
for
friends
for a
and
lot
stuff?
of folks watching TNG at the time, I understand that would have been some good Schadenfreude. I don't think
Yeah.
you could have gotten Will Wheaton on board with that, though. He was
Probably
about
not,
done with the
no,
character
but-
at that point, as I
Yeah.
understand it.
Yeah. Yeah. Only one more appearance after
Mm-hmm.
this before a deleted scene in Nemesis. But it's not a backdoor pilot, but it could have been. They could
easily.
have
It really
been
could have
testing
been.
the waters.
It came
here.
out certainly in an era of television when that was still common practice, and I was honestly a
Yeah.
little bit surprised to learn in my little bit of reading into the production history that I did that was apparently never even talked about or discussed. Like I don't know. It seems like a
Yeah.
fairly obvious premise. Then we know how often the Starfleet Academy idea has been discussed in both TV and film form. So I'm a little surprised that they didn't look at this episode as a potential opportunity to at least gauge interest in something like that.
Though by this point, DS9 would have been well underway in production, so they
It would
probably
have been,
wanted a third show.
and the very early maybe discussions of Voyager possibly, but also this show was one season away from winding down, so there could have been a need or a thought conversation about like, hey, maybe we can see if this Starfleet Academy idea has legs.
It was written by Ronald D. Moore, who obviously went on to helm Battlestar Galactica reboot. And the reason I bring that up is because that show is so well done. But also, he was on Voyager for a little bit prior to heading off to do Battlestar Galactica. And
DS9,
He
of
wrote
course.
one episode of Voyager,
Exactly.
then left.
Yeah.
And by
Well,
a little bit,
was-
he did
he
mean,
was-
in fact, a very little bit.
Yeah.
He was also well involved in DS9, including during the era when our next episode that we're going to be talking about aired.
Yes, and that is a perfect segue to our next episode. The other cadet-centric Star Trek episode was found in Deep Space Nine's 6th season. It's called Valiant, where Jake and Nog are rescued by a Defiant-class ship that is helmed exclusively by cadets for some reason. And hilarity ensues. Or does it? I don't know. I don't think it's especially funny, but hilarity perhaps ensues.
It would have
So-
been hilarity ensues if this were a Lower Decks episode, or if or if this was a fanfic. But
If it was a Lower Decks episode, it'd be all these cadets cruising around the quadrant, just getting drunk
oh yeah,
and
yeah.
doing CW stuff, basically. But it's not. It's much more
It
grim
is.
and adult than that,
surprisingly
so-
grim.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask the same question I did for the first duty. How do we think this fares as A, an episode, and B, a Cadet Academy episode? Mike, we'll go to you first.
As an episode, I think this one's pretty shaky. Pretext for how these cadets get this ship that they're on, the USS Valiant, is a little shaky. I think that the events therein are, you have to suspend some of your disbelief for a little bit to enjoy it, for me at least. But I like Jake, I like Nog, I like their interplay together, and my wife and I are currently rewatching DS9. It's her first watch, and we're only in season 3, so I had to jump ahead here.
Starting to get good then.
Yeah. So I had to jump ahead here to season 6 to watch this episode. So for me, this kind of like I had to reset my frame of mind to understand where in the story Jake and Nog are at this point. But it's a good one, I think, overall for Jake and Nog. As far as showing Academy cadet life, it is very derivative of the first duty. I made the mistake earlier of calling it Red Squad when it was Nova Squadron, and I'm sure I'm going to call this squad Nova Squadron, and someone's going to correct me and say, no, Mike, you meant to say Red Squad.
In my mind, I call them both Red Squad.
Yeah, they're derivative of the same. They're the same idea, aren't they? They're like elite
Yeah.
cadets that are really cool, and everybody loves them, or so we think.
Theoretically.
Yeah, I agree that it's a little bit shaky in the logic of, we're going to put a bunch of cadets on a Defiant class ship and ask them to circumnavigate the Federation. That's not what the Defiant class ship is built for. You're going to ask cadets to sleep in bunk beds for like 2 years or however long this takes. Don't think so.
Yeah,
Get crazy.
sending them on a training cruise on a Defiant class ship was a big ask of the audience, I think, in terms of suspension of disbelief. I remember even as a kid being a little like, all right, I don't buy it, but I like everything else that's going on, so whatever. I just had to at a certain level not let it bother me, even though the basic premise, it's a really tough ask.
The bulk of the episode as well, there was only one main cast member in it. Jake is the only main cast member because Nog was a recurring character. Obviously, the entirety of the main cast are in it, but in very small roles. You have the teaser with Quark and Odo and Dax, and then you have the coda with everyone else appearing. But and it's more of a Nog episode than it is a Jake episode. Jake gets kind of sidelined.
Yeah.
About halfway through, and you don't really see him. He's not even there for the big mistake that happens. So it's more of a Nog episode. So again, they're shouldering an episode basically on a guest star, which they would do with Nog next season again. With it's always a paper moon.
Well, I mean, Aaron can do it. That's the thing.
Oh, yeah.
Like they know Aaron's fully capable of doing that. So
and he'd been hanging around for 6 years at
Yeah,
this point,
yeah.
so they had an idea of what they could expect.
I'm gonna agree, but also disagree slightly with Ian on this. I was able to buy into this a little more because I have watched so many other things where we're at war. Therefore, the cadets in the training school get drafted to jump in because they're the most pre-trained to do it, even if they're not quite ready.
They weren't at war when they started their trip.
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
Because they mentioned war broke out, and then we were in the place that got invaded on the first day.
Yeah, they were just on a training cruise on this incredibly cutting-edge warship, which just seems
That couldn't go above warp 3.
I would still
I want to be very
say
clear. I like this episode quite a bit. This was when I was a kid. I loved this episode. Like, I respond well to this episode, but like as an adult, if I'm looking with a critical eye at a thing that like doesn't make sense, like that has always stood out to me, even from when I was a kid. Like they're on a Defiant. Okay, the reason is because the sets already existed. That's the reason.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's just the reason. It's okay. They didn't want to build a whole new set for this episode. Fine.
They keep cutting from the CGI model of the Valiant that they build for some shots to the Defiant. You can read the registry and the name on the site. It's like, why do they keep showing us the Defiant?
Hey, we weren't supposed to have.
Is it to
We
highlight
weren't
that
supposed to
they're
have
looking
this
for them?
visual fidelity, okay? Go watch it on your BoobTube TV.
Yeah, there you go. Fair. Okay, but I still think, like, I have seen enough where, like, okay, we're going to put the kids out in this potentially dangerous situation for a training scenario because XYZ reason. I've seen that in other sci-fi as well, so I guess that maybe, like, lets me tolerate the idea a little better. But also I'm like, I feel like surely Starfleet Intelligence knows a little more about what's going on, and they can have folks out there under the premise of, oh, this is a training mission. We're not doing anything untoward towards the Dominion or whatever, but, and maybe have it under the guise as that, and then they just don't know. I could see that, maybe. All of that being said, the fact that Nog buys in so quickly is like a marker of Nog's ego hasn't been taken down a peg yet, because we haven't gotten to It's Only a Paper Moon. Yeah. And Nog's like, yes, of course I am first officer or chief engineer. Why not? And Jake's like, if my dad can't do it, and then so maybe Nog's like, yeah, I know your dad's pretty great, but okay, come on, you're saying that because he's your dad. You idolize your dad.
Well, he gets a strong reality check in this episode, I think. Mm-hmm. It's an important lesson for Nog as one of the survivors, he learns probably shouldn't have got caught up in the romanticism of, yeah, we're behind enemy lines. We get to pretend to be officers and we get to do this really cool thing that everyone's going to love us for.
Yeah, he's been very eager to prove himself from the very moment he decided that Starfleet was where he wants to be. And ever since then, it's been nothing but dedication and wanting to be the best, including his wanting to be a part of Red Squad. When we first meet the concept of Red Squad in DS9, he's talking about them, he's putting them up on this pedestal and talking about how everybody puts them up on this pedestal because they're the best of the best. And right from the get-go, he wants to be a part of that. He wants to be considered the best of the best, and he wants to be Mr. Starfleet. And that's an important part of his character journey, like running into these challenges to that idealism.
Yeah. I had to laugh when Waters said to Jake, I've heard a lot about your father. It's like, yeah, he yelled at you a couple of years ago. He yelled in your face.
Right.
Waters was one of the cadets that sabotaged the power system in the Homefront Paradise Lost two-parter.
Good catch.
He comes back for this. It's the same name as well, so it's the same guy.
Okay.
I've heard a lot about your father.
Recurring character.
He screamed at me a couple of years ago,
literally
and
heard.
I wet myself.
Heard directly.
From the source.
Yeah.
Bit'll flecked your face.
Yeah, and we know that he wet himself because you would. If Cisco was yelling in your face,
absolutely not.
You'd lose control.
Cisco or Avery Brooks?
It's a scary, scary man.
Yes.
Either
yes
or.
and yes.
Yeah. Where's the line?
Fair.
There isn't one.
Yeah. But we have Waters that's the kind of main representative of this group of cadets, and he's an idiot.
Yeah.
He just is. He's in way over his head. He's blinded by arrogance, and he thinks being overconfident will be a substitute for experience. He just thinks, if I will it, it will happen. And he's a moron and shouldn't be in charge of anything.
I mean, guys, I hate to say something that's probably going to sound kind of sexist, but like, aren't a lot of men like that?
Yeah. Oh,
completely.
I mean, gestures wildly at most governing bodies.
Yeah, but also especially school-age, arrogant, entitled young men.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a potent mix of ignorance and arrogance.
Sure.
And he was deputized by the captain. He was put in charge, so he thinks he belongs there. He wasn't just the only one around.
He thought I was the best one for the job. Bro, you probably were the only one for the job. So
you were the one standing there when the guy was dying. So, congrats.
Yeah.
I'm sure you were the best one in the room.
Well, there was that line in a previous episode where Nog said they were talking about an old naval tradition is you call whoever's in command captain, even if they're not captain by rank. And he's like, so if everyone was incapacitated and I had to take command, they'd have to call me sir. And O'Brien says to Nog, by that time there'll be no one around to call you anything.
Yeah,
I remember that. Yeah.
Another interesting thing about Waters is he doesn't want his officers thinking about anything but their work, so he doesn't really see them as people. He's like, how dare you cry?
Yeah.
Get back to work.
Yeah. What's super interesting about Waters is he very much plays into the stereotypes of what command structures look like. He's very quick to go hard on the Starfleet ethos and the chain of command. And we have a mission. We have to stick to the mission. Never mind the fact the ship you're on can't go past warp 3.2 until Nog comes on board. And even then, he's doing his best, I think one thing that comes through is I believe that the captain, after transferring command to the cadet, he had passed. Starfleet Command sent new orders to the Valiant, and the cadets basically received them, and instead of saying, hey, here's our new situation, they just follow the orders. Because that's what they're trained to do at this point. That they're not trained to think separately. They receive the orders, and they follow them. So Waters here is doing the same thing. He's not really thinking critically about the situation. He's just following orders. And we all know who people who follow orders do, right? Like, they just brain dead. They're brain dead.
Well, it's also really easy to be fanatical about the importance of a hierarchy when you're at the top of it.
Good point.
Like when you discover that, in fact, I'm the one with all the authority, then all of a sudden respect for authority becomes really important to you. And yeah, like little things like critical thinking just don't really factor into the equation. It's all about
Yeah.
structure and the rigid adherence to the structure, which you just happen to find yourself atop.
And there's the arrogance of, we assume that we can do this job just as well as the trained officers can.
Yeah,
We've had some
Yeah.
training.
right.
We know what buttons to press.
But like
How hard can it be?
these guys just experience over and over and over again. That's the danger sometimes of this kind of attitude. The born on third base and think you hit a triple thing. Like you're the captain because you were the person in the room when the actual captain died. Like that is that is an enormous change in the circumstance. Like there is not like and you are not at a near equivalent skill level. There's this huge gulf of difference between the operational capacity of the man who died and yourself, and you are duty bound. Again, first duty is to the truth. Like you report that, you tell the truth, you recognize the situation at hand, and you come forward and you do the right thing, and you be honest about that, because in your heart of hearts that if you did, Starfleet would not just be like, oh, okay, then carry on.
Yeah, I'm sure the captain turned command over to you with the intention of taking the ship home.
Yes, on a 2-year mission. Yeah, go ahead. Take the ship to war. Do whatever you feel like. You're the captain now. I said.
Yeah.
It's your ship now. Yep. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Another thing he does is he pops himself with pills to stay awake, and he's always on the bridge during different watches. So he's not understanding leadership in the sense of he needs to be well rested so that he's his best self. He seems to think that, and a lot of people think that with work is the more I'm there, the more productive I am and the better I am. Like, no, it's not. That's not it at all. It's just, that's presenteeism.
I don't remember if Ronald D. Moore ever got to write for Babylon 5, but there is definitely a Babylon 5 episode arc, like a small arc. One of the main characters was using what they called stims, but it was a stimulant to keep himself awake, to keep him active, because nobody can do as good a job as him. It's this, like, as soon as it's like, oh, he got stims, okay, that's not good. As somebody who's certifiable, I wouldn't say I'm a coffee addict, but like, I do drink a lot of coffee because I really like coffee. But it because of the way my brain is wired, it's never been I must have this to keep me awake or keep me going sort of thing. I just enjoy it.
Right, not having it for a couple of days and then see how you react.
I mean, it is better for everybody's health and well-being if I do. So anyway, but it's not a situation where I'm like, gotta power through, gotta stay awake for the next 3 days, so better just keep pounding that espresso. Here I go. Yeah, but it's like a question of, are you having addiction problems? And for him, it may not be necessarily addiction problems so much as like addicted to ego problems.
And he might not trust his crew as well to do their job properly. So he's one of those helicopter captains, isn't he? He's always looking over people's shoulders and making sure they're doing their jobs right, and making sure they're not discussing their personal lives when they're supposed to be working, that kind of stuff. Basically, if he was my boss, I'd hate him.
He's got newly promoted middle
like
manager written all over him.
Yeah, and in some ways it's not his fault because he has so much to learn.
True.
But in a lot of ways it is his fault because he's a moron.
Well, once again, better decision making would prove him to be an appropriate commanding officer. There are multiple opportunities presenting to him in this episode where he can say, okay, we've done our part, let's return to Federation space. But he continues to press on.
Yeah. And that's the thing, he makes the speech about some other ship and some other crew will finish this job, but so you don't understand what Starfleet's about. It's a teamwork organization. You've done more than anybody would have asked of you. Now it's time for the actual competent, experienced people to come in and do this. Because, like Jake said, my father would not attempt this. He knows a suicide run when he sees it, and he likes a good suicide run once in a while. But even this is too much for him in one little ship.
Mm-hmm.
But he's more interested in glory than the safety of his crew. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we see these...
Jake's article would be Red Squad, more like Dead Squad.
Yeah.
If you
We
were
see
writing a
these
BuzzFeed
arrogant
headline, yeah.
leaders.
Yeah, we don't know what he's writing for.
Huh?
Federation News Service. Well, yeah. But it's an interesting episode anyway, and it's interesting that Nog gets sucked into the, like I said, the romanticism of this. I get to be an officer. I get to be Lieutenant Commander Nog, the chief engineer of this ship, because I know what I'm doing, because I've worked on this engine before.
And I think it speaks to Nog's psychology. Like, he is someone who is so used to being underestimated and has experienced so much bigotry in his life. You know, like, unfortunately, he's in model minority mode. He needs to be the best. He needs to show everybody that he's the best, which is why being accepted by these people is so important to him in a way that it wouldn't be otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, he wants that validation.
Yeah.
In Jake's perspective, I wish there was more of it, actually, because I don't like that he gets sidelined some of the way through the episode, especially when it gave you the reason for him being there. It's like, you're the civilian eye on this. You get to watch this unfold and report on it. And then they don't like what they hear, so they just shove him off to the side, which makes complete sense, but it also means you lose Jake's perspective as well.
Yeah, he gets a little lost in the sauce.
Yeah. And it's a shame because you don't get that many great Jake episodes.
Maybe not standalone episodes, but I think he's often a great element in other episodes. Unfortunately, I think this isn't really one of them. Like you said, he does get sidelined a little bit, but I would have liked to have seen more.
When I was watching the episode this morning, Mr. Nerdy Blogger was like, "Hey, I like Jake's suit in this one," and I was like, "Yeah, it doesn't look like the cover of a bus seat." So it's like he is wearing a cool suit. He pulled out the fancy does since he might be meeting the Grand Nagus.
Looks like clothes that people might actually be seen outside wearing.
I know, right? It's like
which is rare for Star Trek.
Yeah. Again, not the cover of a bus seat. So, so anyway.
Yeah, but it's a shame that he sort of disappears. But I love that conversation he has with Waters where he gets called up to be reprimanded. It's like, so you were talking to my officer about her home? How dare you?
How dare you make polite conversation? We don't allow that on this ship.
Yeah. All we do is talk about work. And if you're not popping stims and on the bridge all the time, then go away.
Yeah, the guy's kind of a jerk.
Yep. It's more his first officer, though. He can seem quite amenable in some ways. He's quite good at approaching people on their level. It's like, Jake, can I call you Jake? It's kind of smarmy, but you can tell that it works.
We've got another manipulative leader here.
Yeah. But the first officer, I've just put in my notes, Karen is such a Karen.
She really is. She really is. She's the hatchet woman for this guy.
I don't remember anyone inviting you to the bridge. She says, like, really condescendingly. She's
on Wednesdays we wear pink. You can't sit with us. You know.
Yeah. And you have Chief Collins as well, she's just having a hard time.
And who wouldn't be in this situation unless you're stimming the crap out of your brain like this dude is?
She's homesick. She's overwhelmed.
All very reasonable.
Yeah, especially when she's supposed to be probably, 18, 19, 20, something like that. I don't know how old those actors were. Weirdly, Waters looks really young, but the others don't. But that might be deliberate.
I'm reading through a little something here about Nog, because what I find interesting is that Nog is in the academy at this point in the episode, at this point in the season. And if I'm not mistaken, he is a non-commissioned officer at this point.
No, he was properly commissioned earlier in the season. He shows up in his uniform and it's like, they made me an ensign. And O'Brien's like, didn't realize things were so bad.
Yeah.
And
rude.
And it was like, no, seriously, well done.
Which by this point, Nog would actually outrank all the cadets on the Valiant.
He would
Technically,
outrank
although-
O'Brien, technically.
Yeah,
Technically.
although Waters was giving a battlefield commission, so I guess that would
Yeah.
probably override Nog's actual rank. Although imagine if, like, say Riker turned up, Commander Riker turned
That would be
up.
different.
It's like, technically I'm a captain. It's like, sit down.
Yeah, so I'm just reading through here, and it looks like Ronald Moore, he based the premise on the 18th and 19th century naval tradition that an acting captain can only be removed from command by a flag officer. So even though at this point,
another captain or admiral.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Or Riker,
Yeah.
who would tell him to sit down and shut up.
But I think, well, he would have to be in command of his own ship in order for him to be considered a flag officer, right?
I believe. Yes.
Yeah.
I believe that is the case.
Like if he was just serving as first officer on the Enterprise, I don't think he could just commandeer this ship.
No, but he would be like, you're all a bunch of kids. I'm Commander Riker.
Right.
Sit
He
down.
could definitely big dick him, but I don't think like in terms of the actual like structure hierarchy of that tradition he could.
Yeah. But yeah, you wouldn't have an actual experienced first officer or flag officer. Like Nog is
Right.
inexperienced, so it makes sense that he would fall in line, especially when he already respects Red Squad, and in his mind he's probably a bit of a cadet as well.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
if some of the, I don't know, if anybody, if like Worf turned up, for example, like, I mean, Worf would just take charge.
Yeah, I think he would
Yeah.
physically remove him from command.
Yeah. Worf would be
Even
having
O'Brien.
none of this.
Yeah. Even O'Brien would tell them to shut
Oh,
up.
yeah.
And, you know, I know what I'm doing.
Jesus, get out of that chair.
I don't know what accent
It
that
was
was
terrible.
but
I'm so
something
sorry
like-
to all of the Irish folks listening. My Irish
I
heritage.
think O'Brien
is
would just
shamed
like
now.
tinker with the environmental controls until they all passed out, and then
Right.
and then be like,
All right.
get these kids out of here.
Yeah.
O'Brien be like, yeah, I don't roll up my sleeves all the time for
Enough of
nothing. Bam.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the experience gap
Yeah.
is the key thing here, because Nog doesn't have, or doesn't feel like he has that level of authority to be like,
Well, there's also the
Captain,
whole
no.
standpoint, if these are essentially kids, and no one is gonna let another kid come into their house and be like, "I'm in charge now." That's not gonna have the result.
yeah. And well, but Nog shows more practical thinking than any of them, because he's like, right, I've turned off all the safety protocols on the engine, and I've made all these changes. It'll work now. I know it'll work. We never had an issue on the Defiant. And they're like, oh no, you've overridden so many safety protocols. Like, yeah, that's sometimes just what you have to do to get things to work. This engine was designed by people that don't understand that it's supposed to power essentially a set of guns strapped to it. And
Yeah. They really lean hard.
Right. Yeah.
All of the cadets really lean hard on, heroism and these concepts of what heroic actions are. You know, much like Waters, who sees the captaincy as a strict hierarchy of command, and we have a mission, we have to chase it. The cadets all seem to, fall in line behind him. I mean, even at the end of the episode, Collins is basically almost arguing for Waters, saying like, "Hey, no, he did a great thing. He was a great guy." It's like,
we failed him.
yeah. So I'm surprised.
He drunk the Kool-Aid.
I am surprised by that. And I will be curious to see if, in the new show, these elite squadrons, if we are shown any type of elite squadron, what that will look like. Will it be the same sort of context of, oh yeah, they're perfect and by the book when they are being watched over by the adults, and then the second the adult leaves the room, they're looking to, I don't know, do something absolutely batshit crazy.
Yeah, not sure what we'll get with that. Yeah, I would really like to see a focus on young people making mistakes and learning from them.
Agreed.
And this episode is the worst possible mistake, although they don't get to learn from it
Well,
because they
Nog
all die.
learns. I think Nog learns.
Nog and
Yeah.
Collins,
Yeah.
they stick around.
Yeah. Yeah, but Waters never gets to understand
No,
his hubris, does he?
Perhaps in the very final moment off screen, he understands.
Yeah. His last thought is, oh, oops,
Oops.
shouldn't have done that. I love his speech. I actually quite like the whole build up to the attack, because it's framed as this big, the team is getting ready. It's a big hero moment. We're all going to go into battle together and we're going to emerge victorious. But it's framed in a way that it's just, it's kids playing dress up. They're not actually those heroes. It's not the same kind of montage you'd get with if Cisco was doing it. In his speech, I took a note of the line, "Take a look around, and I don't mean look at the walls." Look, obviously. Everybody understands what you mean by that. He's trying to give the rousing captain's speech, and he sucks. So he can't do it.
It's like that episode.
Like, if you put those words in Patrick Stewart's
It's
mouth,
like that episode where
it would still be rubbish.
where Boimler joins the red shirts, and the red shirts at the end of the episode all stand as Tendi is having her freak out moment, and they all start making their competing terrible speeches.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's give our bold, inspiring speech, and Boimler's like, this isn't actually helping. Banana hot.
But it's deliberately a bad speech.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
I think it's meant to showcase his hubris, but also, like, I could see myself if I had been, let's see, this was when did this air? 96, something like that.
1998.
Sure.
98. So I could see 13-year-old me, if I had watched Star Trek then, being like, yeah, us underdog kids, we can do this. And then, getting my butt handed to me watching the ending of this episode. Be like, oh no. Oh, that was a terrible idea. So, it's one of those situations like, yeah, you might be an adult, but sometimes you need to go get a more adultier adult. This was one of those times.
It's because we're used to seeing the heroes in the hero ship beating the odds.
Yeah.
That's why they blew up a Galaxy class ship when they introduced the Jem'Hadar to establish
which is
how threatening
super
they are.
effective, by the way.
They can destroy the
super
Enterprise.
effective, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So here we get to see the Defiant go up against something and be trounced because it has a crew that aren't able to handle it in control.
Right. Yeah. I think I do remember as a kid it impacting me in that way of, oh man, like these would normally be the young characters that you would be rooting for, and the episode just subverts that over and over again, and then even by the end you're like, well, surely they're the underdogs, like, and they're the Federation, and they're on the Defiant, the coolest ship ever. Surely they'll prevail. No, nope, not that kind of show.
It's not even close.
No.
It really isn't
No.
close. The Defiant is no match for
Takes
this
more
thing.
than a can-do attitude.
Yeah, it really does. It's quite a poignant tragedy. The tragedy of the Valiant.
To quote the great philosopher Aragorn, son of Arathorn, "You have a stout heart, little hobbit, but that will not save you." And I'm like, ooh, I feel that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's even in the initial onslaught where cadets are dying all over the bridge, and they just keep going.
It makes you wonder, like, what sort of leadership did they have leading up to this? And those are the questions that I think get left unanswered for the entirety of the Trek franchise. Because if you have Nova Squadron being, so egotistical, narcissistic, and, the leader of Nova Squadron thinks that they can just do this, then you've got Red Squad on a Defiant class starship when the Dominion War breaks out, and they think they are absolutely capable of, pushing the envelope, going past the original remit of the orders and now taking on new orders. It just feels like, is Starfleet running a school for officers, for cadets here that will grow into the captaincy positions and the command positions that they desperately need? Or are they just, taking anybody from everywhere and letting them run about? Because these two episodes, watching them back to back essentially, you could very well take away that the academy entrance process and who they allow into their squadrons, their elite squadrons, is really not that good.
And the kind of, to your point, the kind of leadership that the kids are getting can't be that great. I mean, you're having like all of these decisions that are being made and then supported by these supposedly best of the best, and I worry that rather than getting actual guidance and leadership, all they've been getting all these years has been cheerleading. Like they just did well on certain assessment tests and were just congratulated and passed along, and then they were welcomed into this elite society of excellence, and they're all gathering together sniffing their fucking farts, and there's never any challenge that they're actually faced where they have to question whether or not they are capable. I mean, you see how a frequently necessary part of a hero's journey is to face failure and defeat in some way to overcome challenges and learn through them. And these kids, you get the sense just based on how they're acting that they've been handed a lot of things despite their excellent scores and their excellent conduct on whatever evaluations they've gone through. They've been handed an awful lot, and this is what you get at the end of that.
I'm sure we've all met these people that are just insufferably academic, though. They pass every test that's put in front of them. They have no common sense.
Right.
But
Right.
if you've put them in front of some kind of quiz, they'll ace it.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to actual practical real world stuff,
Yeah.
they don't have a clue. And I feel like that might be a sense of that there. And Waters maybe followed the example of the captain that was reacting under a crisis situation
Yeah.
a little too literally, as in this is how command is, as opposed to this is how command is under very stressful circumstances. As in, we're face to face with a Cardassian ship. We both have no power. The ship that gets power back first wins.
Right.
And you can imagine this captain cutting a lot of corners to get power back online while he's bleeding internally and has a punctured lung. So he'll be making a lot of quick and possibly not protocol-driven decisions. And then Waters learns from that and it's like, well, that's how I'm going to command. Because again, he's academic. He's not practical.
And you've got to have both. Like, sure, you might be able to practically do the job, but if you don't know the finer points of like the inner workings of why this is done XYZ way versus just doing it and getting it done, you could be setting yourself up for a world of hurt. And likewise, like if you have only the academics but no practical real world experience, also you have to like wonder, again, I know those kids were not in a war situation when they went out on the Valiant, but now we are. Did they skip the psychology portion? Did we skip this is how to actually lead and work with other humans, and how to listen and take stock of the situation, where yes, you might know like all the textbook rules of why to do a certain thing, but if you're not taking into account this is not the ideal scenario, then you might need to change your game plan. And I don't think these kids have that kind of structure or knowledge in place in order to act accordingly. Which is why you've got a guy like Waters who's all like, yeah, well, this guy did it with a punctured lung and internal bleeding, and I admire that kind of fervor, certainly in a emergency scenario like they were in. And gosh, yeah, I probably would have done the same thing, but that is not the situation we're in anymore. Like, okay, let's reevaluate, because again, not ideal circumstances. So
that's why tests like the Kobayashi Maru exist, probably, to teach the cadets humility. If they're so used to winning all the time, here's something that will make you lose. Although the test doesn't work if you're expecting it, if it's well known. So, but in theory, there would be tests that show you the difficulties of command. Remember that episode where Troy was trying to get full commander pips and she's going through that
Yes.
test, and she can't pass it because she's trying to
Yeah.
be technical. But the solution is you have to order someone to their death,
Yeah.
which is a reality of command. And yeah, Waters just hasn't had those lessons. He's not, like you say, actually suffered failure in any way. So he's probably just been patted on the back every step of the way. The worst he's had is yelled at by Cisco for being
Which,
sloppy.
you know, again, not a great thing to experience. That is a go change your pants
No.
afterwards experience. So Cisco didn't punch you like he did Q. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting psychological question, isn't it? Because we know that Starfleet has psychological tests because Wesley had that as part of his entrance exam. He had to do the same choice that Picard had to do when it was between his father and some other officer.
you know, here, let's not inject some like PTSD or trauma into your, you know, academic testing. It's not already stressful enough. Here you go.
Yeah, well,
But yeah.
but when it's the life or
yeah, yeah,
death of being out there in space where things are unpredictable, you know, where you can't always fall back on the rules, then that's the way it is.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you know, you have these, you know, these outsized egos and you know, all of these what seem, at least to the audience, to be obvious kind of flaws in your ability to command and do these jobs that you insist that you're ready to do. It does make you wonder what the evaluation process is like for these supposed best of the best cadets. I'm glad they don't go back to this well too often of, you know, cadets gone wrong or elite cadets gone wrong, because it does at a certain point make you wonder, like, who's deciding these are elite cadets after all?
Right.
Well, that's why they graduate as ensigns and they get put through their paces and they get yelled at by
For sure.
captains and
For
they
sure.
get shown
Yeah.
that they're not all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is
Regular cadets must be
important as
real
well.
mouth breathers. I mean, if these are the best of the best, it does
Well,
not
we all know
speak
that-
well to the average cadet.
We all know in Star Trek there's only 7 people that know how to do anything. Just the way it
That's why they had
is.
to
Maximum
go
of
on the
7
Defiant
per
each
ship.
week.
Yeah. A ship of thousands, but only 7 people know what they're doing.
Odo, station security? Yeah, it's close enough. Come on. You're coming with.
You can press a few buttons. They're fine. Pretty much it. And the wrap up of the episode, I really liked the differing perspectives on the tragedy, because you had Collins saying he was a great man, he was a hero, and Nog said he might have been a great man, he might have been a hero, but he was a bad captain. And Jake write it and let people make up their own minds. Which is great because it's not preaching at you as to what the message is here. It's like this was a really complicated and crappy situation for everybody, and yeah, because Waters could be seen in some ways as a bit of a cult leader.
Yeah.
Because the way he controlled people and made them do what he wanted, because he wanted to go back a hero. And again, if instead of the escape pod with 3 people in it, if the Valiant had limped back heavily damaged after having even destroyed the Dominion ship, but a bunch of cadets were dead, you can imagine Cisco would have yelled at him, being like, that was reckless, that was irresponsible, you should have taken the sensor readings and come back.
There is a short story called Dorian's Diary in the anthology book Strange New Worlds 3 that established that Collins returns to Tycho City following destruction of the Valiant, where she receives counseling from Deanna Troi. In 2374, she's awarded the Cluster of Courage, and the rest of the deceased Red Squad members were also awarded posthumously. Internal Affairs also launched an investigation into the actions of the cadets and criticized the decisions they made, but the public perception of them as heroes of the Dominion War made them overlook the actions of Red Squad. I read that off the Memory Alpha page just as I was doing some background learning about this episode, looking for production notes, and I thought that was super interesting. So again, that was a short story called Dorian's Diary from the anthology book Strange New Worlds 3.
And that's the thing about Beta Canon, where they try and draw these things, but they always bring in like the familiar character, which just makes the universe feel a bit smaller, doesn't it?
It always
like,
does.
Of course it was Deanna Troi that counseled her instead of some random counselor, because there are millions of them.
The thing that I do like about that, it does raise the sort of complicated issue of, hey, we were at war. They obviously did something they shouldn't have done, but like, we're not gonna like these kids died. We're not gonna like pillory them in public.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna let people believe that they're heroes and like look, their courage was not in question. Their willingness to put their lives in line was never in question. How necessary that was and whether or not that was in accordance with the intent of their original orders, like that was very much in
Yes.
question. So I do like
Yeah.
the kind of recognition of the sort of messy nuance of that situation.
Hmm.
And their parents don't need to hear that their children were morons.
Right.
Right,
That
exactly.
is not helpful at all to a grieving parent.
And again, this war story of these kids, they stepped up, they got the sensor readings, they just got really unlucky. You don't have to flesh out the details of how unlucky they got. It's just they got the sensor readings, but then were blown up.
You also have to wonder too, like how much of this is Starfleet playing a PR game as well.
Right.
Because
It's a bit of a
they're like
propaganda victory.
these cadets, like let's revere them as heroes, even though they did stuff they shouldn't have. Because if we like lambast them in public, like are people gonna really want to join Starfleet after that?
Yeah. Especially during the war.
No, thank you. That that's not going to get people to buy war bonds or sign up or volunteer.
Join Starfleet. We will put your kids on an active ship and send them up against the meanest enemy ship we can find.
Yeah.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds awesome. We also use Defiant class ships as training vessels because we have so many of them, apparently.
All readily available.
Yeah. Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But interesting episode. Again, it's an example of an off format. Can we make an episode work without most of the main cast for most of the episode? And yes, you can.
One other thing I would add, because we talked a little bit about Jake's role in this, and I think like the one thing that kind of bothered me in this episode is, while I have not taken journalism classes per se, I know folks who teach journalism and have taken journalism classes and are have journalism degrees. Jake's again first duty is to tell the truth. If you're a journalist, you have to give the facts, and kind of like Nog's encouragement to put both. Like Waters was a good dude, yeah, maybe, but like based on what my experience of him was, my answer is at best he was arrogant and foolish. Like he just felt too power and glory corrupted for me. So I don't know. I was troubled by the conversation that Nog's having with him about how you should let people decide. I'm like, you don't get to let people decide what's true or not.
He can report the facts, but then he could use Colin's words in his article as well. Acting Chief Collins said this about him. This was my experience, or, well, proper journalism, unless it's an opinion piece, which it wouldn't be unless he is writing some kind of opinion column somewhere. But it would be, this is the story of the Starship Valiant. Here's what happened. I was there. These are the facts, X, Y, Z of what happened. The one survivor says this.
Fair.
Nog said this, etc. And then that allows your reading audience to interpret the story in whatever way they want.
I don't know. I just, and again, this is because gestures wildly at everything. The like, oh, well, you should tell it like this. And I'm like, I'm not going to let anybody tell me how to tell it. I'm going to tell it like it is, period. Yeah. So that just like made me squirm.
Well, we know from earlier in the season, Jake has issues with letting his bias come through in his writing, because when he was on Deep Space Nine, or Terok Nor, when it was occupied by the Dominion, he was writing his stories and referring to them as the station's occupying force. And Wei-Yin was like, I'm not saying that. Are you crazy?
Right.
Again, it's not an angle that they dig deep into. We never really got a Federation journalism thing. We did get an episode where Jake was behind the lines during the Klingon conflict, but again, you don't get a sense of what story he wrote at the end of it.
Yeah, I don't really know what he even means or thinks he means when he says he's practicing journalism. It is very possible that he means something very different from what we think of these days. He may just be writing I mean, the kind of playing a little bit fast and loose with facts type of gonzo journalism or more sensationalist journalism, that we would now not recognize as like real journalism, but that nevertheless has historic precedent. Like, I always just sort of think Jake is doing that, which is not your sort of beat reporter, just the facts, here's the reporting. It's a very, very subjective kind of experiential, calling it reporting almost feels like a misnomer kind of thing. But again, we never really get that much insight into what Jake's style is. It's one of the things I wish that we got a little bit more of. I know some of the Jake writing episodes that we get are some of the worst of DS9, but if they had just done a good job with it, I would have really enjoyed it.
He was working for the Federation News Service.
Yeah,
Really
yeah, right. Like, I don't really know. Like, that's sort of my headcanon, is that he's doing something that he is calling journalism that is not what we would typically recognize as that. But yeah, I think it's a good
Or
point.
maybe it's exactly what we recognize as journalism these days.
Right, right. Maybe it's exactly as subjective as everyone assumes journalism is or is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Triggered.
Yeah. We never find out, though. We don't know what Jake does really most of the time. He can disappear for episodes at a time until they need to remember that Cisco is a kid. Then he shows up again. Yeah, weird.
Just gonna assume he's playing Dabo.
Probably. Yeah.
We just watched the episode last night where Cisco invites the Dabo girl over for dinner, and Jake is like, "Why'd you do that, Dad?"
And it turns out she is taking herself to university or something like that. She's just
She's a Dabo girl with a heart of gold.
Yeah, she has brains as well as not brains.
Beauty. Beauty's the word you're looking for, Craig.
As well as the traits that Quark hires based on. There we go. That's the best way of putting it. Any last things on Valiant before we wrap up? I don't think I have anything either. So.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Yeah, just interesting episode.
Yeah, I like it. I've always liked it.
Yeah, that messed with the format, and they make some really good use out of standing sets. Because DS9's in one shot, in one scene, then it's the Defiant the rest of the time, apart from the runabout cockpit, which again, standing set.
Yep.
The Defiant, then the Defiant again, basically. So, yeah. Although they did have some expensive effect shots in there as well. They did create some new models of the Defiant class with Valiant written on the side. And then sometimes they use the same stock images they use.
They also, that Jem'Hadar battleship reappears a couple times throughout season 6. So if in terms of like continuity, it's a cool, like, hey, there's a new battleship. We need information on it. And then it shows up later.
Yeah. A CGI asset that they can reuse.
Yep.
Yeah. They can copy and paste it a couple of times.
Them blowing up the ship looked pretty good still, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. Seems like they'd done it and then they didn't. They just caused a large explosion that then did nothing, apparently. Yeah. Well done, guys. Cool then. So I hope that's us all well primed for the actual Starfleet Academy show and see if we'll get any of this stuff in there. But it was pretty slim pickings of cadet stories from the franchise. These are the two more prominent ones. And you have, as I say, Wesley's entrance exam. You get a bit of it in Star Trek 2009. But you don't really get much more. You get mentions of when I was at the Academy from various characters. Torres knows things that Sneezy didn't teach in his survival course, all that kind of stuff. So you just get little references here and there. But this is the closest we get to actual Academy stories. Until next week, as we record.
That's right.
Because
coming back for Star Trek Starfleet Academy, the show.
How many decades in the making? Since, I guess, Star Trek 6, isn't it? That's the earliest floating of that idea.
I don't know when it originated, but I do...
It was that era, I think.
Yeah, for
Certain-
Star Trek
certainly in
6, it was
movie
going to be like a
form.
flashback to Academy days
Yeah.
originally, and then it didn't become that.
Cool.
I think we can all safely say, though, it will be well worth the wait.
Well, some people may say that,
Craig loves it.
yes. How about I just write it and
Fair.
let the people decide for
There
themselves?
you go. There you go, Craig. Good way to put a bow on it. Love it.
There we go. Yeah.
Ooh.
I will give you back your command codes. I'm done with this now. You can take the blame for the
Oh my
several
gosh,
deaths
the
that have been
explosions,
caused
warp
by this.
nacelles missing. We are Starfleet, the podcast. We are available on all listening platforms, whenever you so choose. We are a part of the Film Stories Podcast Network, which covers all things from, you guessed it, films, TV shows, comics, radio, music, and more. You can follow us at Starfleet Pod on Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, etc., etc. We have our website, wearestarfleetpod.com. That's right. We have a website where you can check out all of our show links, check out who we are, Mike, Craig, Ian, Ashley, and if you are so inclined, you can buy us a Ractigino and help donate to the podcast funding. That's right, having a website, putting up all these podcasts and editing, it takes just a good cup of coffee to keep us going, guys. So if you like what you're hearing, we appreciate you. Give us that 5-star review. And Ashley, do you want to tell us a little bit about more where we can hear things that you're doing over there in your neck of the woods?
Sure. Folks, if you want to connect with me on socials, I am on Facebook, Mastodon, and mostly Blue Sky at The Nerdy Blogger. You can read my words on my blog, nerdyblogging.wordpress.com, which will eventually, in the very near future, become thenerdyblogger.com. So if you're listening to this in the future, check there first. You can also read my words on fangirlish.com, where I write about film and television, mostly Star Trek. I'm going to be covering Starfleet Academy coming up here in the next week. So check out that site for my reviews. As for hearing me, aside from here on We Are Starfleet, on the network, I'm on Podcast 616. It's podcast-616, talking all things Marvel. You can also hear me on Roddenberry Entertainment with Earl Green talking Mission Log Genealogy, which is all about Gene Roddenberry's pre-Star Trek TV writing. Check out missionlogpodcast.com for that. You can also hear me on the Video Store podcast, where myself and 3 other hosts, we rotate in a round-robin fashion, offering film and television recommendations, kind of like what you would get in a video store. Check us out at videostorepodcast.com.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah, I know. I'm a busy lady. I'm a
Keep
busy
going.
lady.
Keep
so.
going.
Yeah.
Ian, I'm going to come to you next here. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing out there on the podcasting network.
I have Illumination Above All, our show on the network that covers the Apple TV show Severance. That is currently in a between season sort of mini hiatus, but we are releasing episodes periodically, so please subscribe to that. You can also hear me on Movieversaries, which I co-host with Bo Nicholson, Violet Hammond, Andy Williams, other friends of the network and this show, and we talk about movies on an important anniversary year, and we are covering all the years that end in 6 this new season. So please subscribe and listen to that. You can also hear me on the Collector's Commentary, a show focused on physical media collection, and we recently just did an episode covering Dark City, which had a fantastic 4K release this year, which we do a 3-hour episode discussing, if that
Longer
doesn't
than
sound
the
too
movie.
intimidating to you. Yeah, much longer than about twice the length of the movie. Yeah,
Right.
to be fair. Yeah, about that. So if you want to do a deep dive into the world of physical media, that's a show for you. And this show here is the other place to hear me.
Perfecto. Craig, let us know a little bit more about Kneel Before Blog.
Yes, I do a fair bit less than the other 2 that you've recently heard. You can find me mainly on Kneel Before Blog, so that's kneelbeforeblog.co.uk. I review things, probably will review Starfleet Academy once I get my Ash in gear and get on with it. So I'll need to do that. And there's an attached podcast where you can listen to monthly news roundups. So we talk news and trailers, things like that, and a deep dive analytical chats about your favorite nerdy things. You can. There's also interviews whenever people will sit down virtually with me and have a chat about their careers. So you can check that out. And I'll plug this as well. I recently became a published author and friend of the show, Baz Greenland's Doctor Who Christmas special book, where I contributed 2 essays about the Doctor Who Christmas specials. And I think Mike was making some kind of money gesture. No, there was no money. It's purely for the love of the game and to see my name in print. So you can get that book and read my 2 essays, or just reach out to me and I could send them to you, I suppose. But buy the book. Buy the book. Someone should make money out of it, even if it's not me. So that's mainly me. I don't do very much else, although I'm always busy.
Yeah, say, Mike, where can people find you?
People can find me here on wearestarfleetpod.com. If you want to hear a little bit more about what I personally do, you can go to mikeslamermusic.com and listen to some cool tunes. Very much Star Trek inspired, science fiction inspired type stuff, but also folksy, acoustic, rock and roll, if you will. So that's my shameless self plug. Big thank you to my crew here, Ian, Ashley, Craig. Really appreciate you guys. You know, this is year 6 we're going into. Can you believe it? Ian, we started this shit. We started it way back. We were talking disco. I think I was doing round tables with different guests, throughout for the first 2 seasons, and then you joined from then on, and we've just been talking Star Trek ever since. So thank you, buddy.
We found these 2 vagrants on the side of the road. Decided to pick them up, give them a ride.
Yep.
Yeah. All good. Happy to jump in the escape pod with you guys.
So Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to all of our listeners out there. Big shout out to all of you first-time listeners, maybe, long-time listeners, maybe. It's all good. Starfleet Academy is coming up. It's dropping next week. These are our primer episodes to discuss a little bit about what we've seen of the Academy life. And this is not all we're talking about here on We Are Starfleet. We also talk Strange New Worlds. We talk Prodigy. Of course, we talk Discovery. We even talk a little Lower Decks. So make sure you check out the website and scroll through that episode listing. And we'd love to hear from you, so give us a shout on Blue Sky, Threads, or Instagram. Thanks so much, everybody. We hope you have a great, great 2026.